What do you do when your VR synchronization rate is only 10% and the latest gaming capsule costs as much as an entire apartment? An ordinary person would just give up. But what if in your past life you were the greatest sword god capable of reading your opponent's every single move? Today we are diving into the story of a guy who entered an ultra-difficult game and using nothing but a rusty pipe showed arrogant pro players and developers who the real boss is. Hit subscribe, make yourself comfortable, and let us get started. A guy wakes up inside a futuristic immersion pod looking a bit dazed after his long gaming session. Ojai, the head researcher, checks on his status, asking how he feels after being under for so long. He admits that his body feels surprisingly light today. And she calls him over to check the new data. The latest capsule model is pushing tech to the limit, making high-level VR accessible to players with physical limitations. Seojun is told his sync rate should not be an issue, but asking about the cost kills the mood fast. The price tag of 100 million won hits him, leaving the kid completely stunned by the insane amount. His bank balance is clearly nowhere near that kind of cash, so the researcher pivots to a very specific business proposal. This high-end capsule is not just for gaming, but a bridge for total immersion that hooks everyone in. Seo-jun remembers how the game felt back in the day, diving headfirst into combat with explosive cinematic power. Every strike was perfectly fluid and incredibly sharp, especially when facing off against massive, terrifying bosses. The action was relentless and fast, pulling him into a world that felt more real than reality. Everyone was obsessed with the VR craze. Right until his system hit a critical error, and his synchronization rate plummeted to a pathetic 10%. Back in the real world, he stares at his phone, scrolling past ads for the latest, expensive capsule tech, realizing that 100 million is still totally out of reach. Wishing he'd never touched the game in the first place, Seo-jun mulls over his past failures while walking home, watching buses roll by plastered with massive gaming tournament ads. The city lights look just as cold as his bank account, but back inside, his roommate is glued to a high-stakes match, witnessing some legendary pro player absolutely crushing the competition. Stepping into the room, he catches the guy screaming at the screen and learns the massive league event is currently live. Asking what the deal is with all the hype, he watches his roommate freak out over the absurd viewer numbers, realizing the scale of this streaming league is absolutely insane. With 15 million viewers tuned in across the globe, the winner claims a prize that would change anyone's life. The roommate starts geeking out over the different weapon builds, debating whether bows or magic hold the real meta while still insisting that swords are definitely the coolest. Listening to the breakdown, Seo-jun remains skeptical of the hype, especially after his roommate recalls getting wrecked in his own tournament run, getting laughed at for his poor performance. He keeps the banter going while his roommate explodes in frustration. Brushing off the sudden interest in Rios, the focus shifts to a message lighting up his phone screen. It is an invitation regarding the upcoming tournament, promising a special capsule package if he decides to compete. An offer is on the table to loan him gear for free, leaving him to weigh the implications of stepping back into that world. After a moment of silence, the decision finally clicks into place. And he casually drops the news to his roommate that he might just sign up. Stunned by the sudden pivot, his friend stops dead in his tracks, still reeling from the unexpected confirmation, but the grin on his face shows he is absolutely serious about the challenge. A look of pure confusion hits his roommate, who cannot wrap his head around such a sudden change of heart. Thinking back on his past, the drive to return is too strong to ignore, fueled by the memory of the glory he once held. Back when he was known as the legendary sword god, the combat memories flood back in, drawing his blade with the familiar weight of a master. He executes a perfect strike that cuts through the chaos of the battlefield, leaving a trail of defeated enemies in his wake as the legend returns. Digging into the past brings back memories he once tried to bury, surfacing like a ghost from the shadows of his former life. He recalls a secret black market hidden within the righteous faction. A place where people were nothing more than commodities to be traded. That slave was actually him, shackled and broken in the darkness, until a violent turning point changed everything for him that night. A mysterious master appeared amidst the carnage to offer a way out, extending a hand to the terrified child he used to be. That rescue became the catalyst for his entire path as a warrior, pulling him from the brink of despair to train under a new mentor. The prodigy was reborn, leaving that wretched life behind for good, though the weight of expectation always loomed over his shoulder. Even the legendary sword god title could not erase the scars of his origin, but he remembers his master's kindness with a grateful heart. Back in the present, his roommate snaps him out of his trance, demanding to know if he has finally lost his damn mind. Entering the Rios tournament is no casual hobby for an average player. And his friend is genuinely worried about the brutal entry requirements. Getting qualified is a pipe dream that costs a fortune, so his friend is not about to let this reckless idea slide. The roommate keeps hammering home how impossible this plan is, pointing out that even the most successful streamers have to grind, stacking up charisma and god-tier skills just to stay relevant. Most creators are just clowns trying to bait an audience, and they spend hours editing just to get a few views. The reality is brutal when the viewer count hits zero, leaving him to wonder how Seo-jun thinks he can survive this. His friend is not backing down from the interrogation, pushing him to explain how he expects to compete with no experience, but Seo-jun just brushes off the doubt with a smirk. He sets his sights on the absolute top of the rankings, claiming he can easily outperform the current national pro champion. The friend thinks he's lost his mind and needs a wake-up call. So he drags him straight to the gaming capsule to prove a point. They make a deal that if Seo-jun can actually hold his own, his roommate will take over all the chores from here on out. Sealing the bet with a confident nod, the system countdown begins as he finally jacks into the virtual world. Despite claiming he had never given it much thought, he steps into the simulation with a look of total focus, pushing past the initial fear of starting something new. He enters the virtual training grounds for the first time. The system announces his arrival as he steps into the lobby, where he finds the guy who dragged him here already waiting. This space is a dedicated training simulator built into the capsule, designed to let users spar against AI versions of past record holders. Seo-jun suggests they just fight each other instead, but his friend points out the danger of taking real physical damage. The AI scaling goes from level 1 all the way to 10, with the final level mimicking the champion Shin Hyeon's legendary record. His roommate explains that clearing level 9 is no small feat, yet Seo-jun does not even hesitate to initiate the challenge. He quickly locks in his selection on the terminal, triggering the match creation as the opponent manifests in the arena. The guy watches in shock, realizing Seo-jun did not even check the settings, as the sleek, high-level AI combatant instantly charges forward. Seo-jun barely manages to intercept the first lightning-fast strike, leaving his friend completely stunned by his reflexive reaction speed. The fight immediately escalates into a high-intensity exchange of blows, forcing the amateur to keep up with a machine built for pros. Seo-jun pivots just as the AI launches its next strike, parrying the glowing blade with a perfectly timed defensive maneuver. The system shows the opponent's health bar finally taking a dip, making his roommate question if this is just a lucky break. But the AI resets instantly and closes the distance for a follow-up, forcing another brutal clash that echoes across the entire training hall. They trade rapid strikes in a blur of motion and steel, with Seo-jun barely finding an opening to land a clean hit. He delivers a precise counter that catches the machine off guard, leaving his friend speechless as the tide of the duel shifts. Seo-jun stands his ground as his opponent recovers from the blow, but the arena suddenly glitches as the machine undergoes a forced transformation. The AI crumples to the ground, signaling the end of the round, and the system displays a victory notification for the level 9 trial. His friend can barely process the news, realizing he just crushed the rank, yet the celebration is cut short by a new, ominous system prompt. The arena starts to reconfigure for the final, highest difficulty setting, manifesting a new combatant that carries a much more dangerous presence. The digital avatar shifts form into the legendary champion Shin Hyeon, leaving both of them stunned as the true challenge finally begins. Seo-jun stands ready to face the legendary digital avatar, while elsewhere the director faces intense scrutiny from her skeptical colleague. Their heated argument centers on the risky decision to grant a free loan, a move her associate clearly believes was way over the line. She admits Seo-jun barely looked capable of even entering the academy, but she simply refuses to let such raw talent go to waste. Reviewing his file, it is clear he barely met the basic requirements, yet she is convinced his true potential far exceeds his previous records. Her partner remains doubtful, still seeing him as a massive long shot, though she remains unbothered, firmly believing in the boy's hidden capabilities. She is betting everything on the outcome of this specific trial, where the battle against the Shin Hyeon simulation kicks off with ferocity. Back in the observation room, the roommate watches with growing nervous anticipation as the system recording begins, locking in the data for the duel. He is genuinely worried about the implications if Seo-jun actually pulls this off, but the screen lights up as the combatants trade heavy, punishing blows. The simulation pushes back with overwhelming force, sending Seo-jun sliding across the floor. Yet he keeps his grip tight, parrying the high-speed strikes with precision. He creates an opening with a swift movement, forcing the AI to retreat, while the simulation calculates its next move against its determined human opponent. Seo-jun realizes the simulation is unlike anyone he has ever encountered, surpassing even the most skilled opponents from his past life. He acknowledges that only one person could truly match this intensity. But a teammate interrupts, stunned by his performance in the ring. The clash continues in the shadows as he narrowly avoids a strike, leaving his teammate questioning how he keeps up with the legendary Shin Hyeon. Every parry requires absolute focus as he absorbs the impact of her blade, blocking the incoming assault with a steady hand and perfect timing. Their weapons lock together, the sound of steel ringing through the digital space. Yet he remains unscathed, noting that the simulation causes him no physical pain. Feeling the sting of a minor health point deduction, he keeps his guard up, while his teammate demands to know why he is testing the AI so recklessly. Seo-jun brushes off the concern, simply admitting his own curiosity drove the choice as the simulation shifts its stance and powers up for a lethal counter. A sudden burst of energy illuminates the arena, signaling a change in pace. And the AI lunges forward with a strike aimed directly at his vitals. He watches the red lights flare, anticipating the weight of the incoming blow, meeting the charge head-on as their blades collide in a blinding flash. Steel bites into steel while he exerts every ounce of strength to hold, leaving the duel hanging in the balance as both combatants refuse to yield. The simulation visor narrows as the AI locks onto its target, but Seo-jun remains unfazed, his eyes tracking every micro-movement. A swift swing from the bot forces him to retreat, and a well-placed kick keeps the distance between them just enough. He pivots away from the follow-up, resetting his footing instantly, yet another glancing strike bleeds a few more points from his health bar. Taunting the machine, he wonders why it's gone so passive all of a sudden, and deciding he's done waiting, he launches a full-scale offensive. Closing the gap in a blur of motion, he forces the bot onto the defensive. And their blades meet in a flurry of sparks that light up the arena. A deafening clash echoes as they trade strikes at impossible speeds, pushing the simulation to its absolute breaking point with every heavy blow. His teammate watches the display, realization dawning that this is not just a basic test, as a clean strike shears the bot's weapon clean off its handle. The disarmed AI stumbles back, its defensive patterns completely shattered. While a confident grin spreads across his face, knowing the end is near. He corners the machine, his blade now leveled at its core, dropping a final quip about how it still needs decades more to win. With one decisive movement, he finishes the sequence and shatters the simulation, finally triggering the system prompt that officially declares him the winner. The news of his victory sends shockwaves through the competition. And with the ownership of level 10 shifting to him, Seo-jun eyes a new path. Sunlight hits the next day, but the reality of his domestic life is far from glamorous, because his brother is already piling on the chores before he can even think about streaming. Between undercooked noodles and a mountain of laundry, there is no room to breathe, and he endures the relentless nagging while dreaming of his escape into the game. He checks the hardware he installed just yesterday, ready to leave the mundane behind, and decides it is finally time to fire up the long-awaited broadcast. Seated in the pod, he takes a breath as the system hums to life, and a blinding flash of light pulls him straight into the virtual void. He finds himself standing in an unfamiliar, pristine white space, looking around to get his bearings in this digital lobby. A system notification pings, confirming he has arrived at his personal command center, where he sees other streamers already prepped and waiting in their own corners. The interface introduces him to the streaming world, showing off the bells and whistles of the platform, and he immediately starts strategizing on how to build his brand from scratch. Testing the controls, he prepares to launch his first session on the massive network. And the screen flashes with the scale of the competitive streaming landscape he is entering. He sets his sights on the ultimate prize, knowing he needs a massive following to reach the top, so he locks in his chosen game, ready to make his mark on the leaderboard. Seo-jun settles on the game Dawn of the Assassination Squad, picking a massive, sprawling medieval city as his virtual stage. The objective is simple but brutal: eliminate targets using whatever chaotic methods work. And since the game blew up on launch day, it is prime real estate for a new streamer. Even a week later, the player base is still obsessed with the mechanics, making it the perfect playground for someone trying to climb the ranks. He scouts out a high vantage point overlooking the city's clock tower, gripping his gear and preparing to strike from the shadows. With a calculated leap, he maneuvers through the darkness like a pro, planting himself firmly on the edge of the stone wall. From this height, he has a clear view of the entire target zone, standing silent as the city lights shimmer far beneath him. He takes a moment to steady himself before the real work starts, and with a sharp grin, he initiates the broadcast to his audience. The interface pulses with a live notification, signaling his official debut, and he decides to lean into his status as a total beginner. Tiwoo suggests a title to lure in viewers, testing if a total newbie hook actually works. While his eager assistant tries to coach him through the streaming basics. Despite his lack of experience with VR titles, he's ready to dive in, and he sets off across the rooftops to hunt his first target. Seo-jun takes a moment to soak in the game's atmosphere, finding the level of detail in this world actually impressive. Stepping forward, the rhythm of the game begins to shift, and he realizes his character's name is Dane. A mysterious woman named Christina appears to set the stage, warning him that this mission is no walk in the park. Realizing the tutorial features auto-dialogue for the NPCs, he notes the shift in voice acting as the lore kicks in. Christina pushes him to take the job seriously, reminding the kid that taking a life requires a price. Accepting the terms, he acknowledges the danger of being discovered, but she tells him to head to the tavern and wait. Handing over a crucial note, she stresses that he should trust no one. And with a sharp smile, the real game finally kicks off. Embracing the incoming chaos, he readies his blade for the task, launching himself across the city rooftops with practiced precision. Moving through the night air, he closes the distance to his target, striking down at his destination with a calculated descent. Landing perfectly on the structure, he readies his next move, fully locked into the role as the mission truly begins. The training wheels are off as the tutorial mode ends, leaving Seo-jun to navigate the city map on his own. Finding a dead end, he gripes about the lack of optimization, but a helpful system prompt nudges him to use the pipes. Grabbing onto the metal, he starts his vertical climb, testing the game's physics with a firm grip on the ledge. His character launches upward with surprising speed and fluidity, clearing the gap with an automated, high-level acrobatic maneuver. Stunned by the smooth movement, he realizes the immersion is legit, figuring out that he just needs to stay loose to keep moving. The quest interface pops up, identifying Edora as his primary mark and confirming that his only goal is to eliminate the target. Studying the provided map, he notes the directions seem actually useful, so he follows the next prompt and grabs a rope to descend. The game walks him through the steps, making the job feel manageable, but his wandering eyes catch something else while he's hanging there. Curiosity gets the better of him as he spots a suspicious button, and despite the prompt suggesting the rope, he wonders if jumping is faster. Letting go of the safety line, he commits to the reckless shortcut and hits the ground hard, finding out the hard way that falling hurts. Seo-jun drags himself up after that embarrassing faceplant, only to realize he's got an unexpected audience watching his every move. The chat is already popping off, roasting his classic newbie mistakes. And the realization that people are actually tuning in hits him hard. He's genuinely confused why 4 whole people decided to watch him, but a familiar face chimes in to remind him about the chat. These usernames are wild, but he finally acknowledges the viewers are there, trying to figure out why anyone would choose his stream over the big ones. He decides it's about making a real connection, not just chasing high numbers, so he focuses on keeping things chill and personal with the crowd. Big streams move way too fast for anyone to actually talk, so keeping it low-key seems like his best strategy for now. The chat confirms he's a total beginner, even checking his 2-day-old profile, and after a quick back and forth about privacy, he finally gets back to business. The gates of Edora's estate loom ahead under an ominous blood-red moon, and the chat is already loving the spooky atmosphere of the mission. He considers just walking through the front door like a main character, but remembers the note he was given and stops to check it. The instructions reveal the target is hidden away in a second-floor bedroom, and with 20 guards standing in his way, the real work begins. With his basic gauntlet and sword equipped, he's ready to move even if the chat is already roasting him for using those starter items. He ignores the noise and decides the gear is enough to get the job done, but before he can step inside, the viewers flood his feed with warnings. They freak out because he is ignoring the instructions in his mission note, and he can't help but notice the chat is getting surprisingly dark about it. When he asks about a rampaging head-on assault, the stream fills him in, explaining that while stealth is the standard, some vets try to power through, but they usually just end up getting obliterated by the amped-up guards. Nobody has ever actually cleared the tutorial with a rampaging playstyle. And the hardcore community has basically written it off as impossible, unless you have the skill of someone like the legend Shin Ha-yeon. Hearing that name catches his attention as he steps toward the gate, and he decides it's the perfect time to put that theory to the test. The estate looms ahead, quiet and deadly under the red moonlight, while he prepares to break the rules and stir up some real chaos, knowing the viewers are watching specifically for the spectacle of his failure. The chat is already betting against his survival, but he just leans into the drama, realizing that as long as he keeps them hooked, the stakes do not really matter, so he commits to the run, provided he does not cross a line he cannot walk back from. Seo-jun steps into the estate, his heavy boots echoing on the stone, and the guards immediately catch his scent, drawing their blades in the dark. The chat is already mocking him for his inevitable death, but he just grins, dismissing their concerns while he prepares to go head-to-head with the soldiers. One guard charges forward, shouting for him to reveal himself, and Seo-jun tracks the incoming strike with focused, predatory intent. He meets the soldier's blade with a clean parry that rings through the night, and the guard staggers backward, completely caught off guard by the sudden resistance. The stream chat goes wild as the viewers realize they just witnessed an impossible feat. But Seo-jun remains calm, readying his weapon for the next move. A massive damage number pops up, signaling he just landed a critical counter, and he wonders out loud if these enemies are supposed to be this fragile. Another guard lunges at him, desperate to regain control of the fight, but he deflects the blow with pinpoint precision, turning the offense back on them. Viewers are losing their minds in the comments, scrambling to process what they're seeing. And even those who called it a fluke are starting to question their own skepticism. He steps in close, capitalizing on the guard's opening with a swift, lethal strike, and the slash connects perfectly, cutting through the defender's remaining health. Another 1,000 points of damage vanish, sending the soldier down to the ground, and he turns back to the chat, ready to remind them who they're watching. The system pings as Seo-jun confirms that his parry actually worked, leaving the chat completely stunned by the move. Viewers are debating whether it was pure talent or just a lucky fluke, but he stays focused, brushing off the demand to stop and explain himself. Some fans are starting to worry for him, begging the fight to end, while he breaks down the mechanics of the parry with a quick doodle for the audience. He explains that even pro-level players struggle with these specific timing windows, but viewers are still questioning if he can actually keep this up, warning him that he'll get wrecked if he does not turn back now. He just smiles, unfazed by their doubt and ready to prove them wrong, realizing that the chat finally understands his movement was not just a lucky break. Memories of his past life surface where his hard work was constantly dismissed by others, but those days of being overlooked are officially behind him. He stares down the remaining guards, his resolve hardening for the next clash. And the squad of soldiers lunges forward to stop his rampage once and for all. Focusing on the core of his technique, he grips his weapon tight, knowing that results are the only thing that will silence the critics. He launches into the fray with a flurry of strikes, tearing through their defense, and his eyes lock onto the next target with predatory precision. Another clean hit lands, leaving the viewers in total disbelief at his efficiency. The chat is losing its mind as he deflects every incoming blow, turning the narrow hallway into a masterclass of defensive swordplay. Each parry is calculated, his focus absolute despite the overwhelming numbers, and he cuts through the guards with brutal, rhythmic efficiency. Silence falls for a heartbeat as he stands over the wreckage, issuing a cold challenge for them to bring even more reinforcements. Viewers are frantically debating his identity while the remaining guards call for backup. But he dives back into the violence without a second of hesitation, leaving nothing but defeated opponents in his wake. With 6 down, he finally takes a moment to breathe, ignoring the flood of confused messages demanding to know who he really is. He keeps his cool even when a toxic viewer starts spamming the feed, and he cuts the problem short by banning the guy from the channel. The chat erupts in approval as he proves he will not tolerate any nonsense. Though he wonders if his sudden surge in popularity is actually a good thing. Reflections of his past life as an aloof sword god start to surface, remembering a time when his talent was simply too great to stay hidden. He recalls the constant noise and annoyance from others who could not keep up, but he shakes off the nostalgia to stay focused on the current fight. He returns his attention to the screen, ready to handle whatever challenge comes next. The chat is losing its mind, demanding answers about his identity. Seo-jun brushes off the pressure with a calm, practiced smile, and he jokingly tells them to just watch his technique instead of speculating. Trolls in the comments are getting loud, calling his moves pure luck, but he barely notices as the next wave of guards swarms the hallway. Dozens of soldiers surround him, weapons drawn and closing in fast. A dark smirk creeps across his face, clearly enjoying the chaos. And he dares the audience to see if he can keep the streak going. The guards shout for his head, unaware of who they are actually fighting. He steps forward, meeting their charge with total, unwavering confidence. Every movement is precise as he slips through their initial lunges, and the steel starts flying as he turns their aggression against them. His sword finds the gaps in their formation with surgical accuracy, his eyes tracking every slight shift in their stances. The chat feed blows up with disbelief as he pulls off another perfect parry, forcing a guard back before he can even land a solid hit. Seo-jun plants his foot to pivot, maintaining perfect control of the space, and he deflects a heavy overhead strike that would have leveled a lesser man. Sparks shower down as he locks blades with yet another soldier, leaving the remaining guards stumbling as he continues to carve his way through. Seo-jun keeps his focus, the gameplay intensity reaching a fever pitch. Viewers watching are losing their minds as the action unfolds live. One fan in particular is spiraling, having recognized this legendary high-stakes player. Known online as a brutal fanatic, this guy has built his reputation on impossible runs. The devs designed this game to be nearly unbeatable, yet he treats it like a playground. Challenges that broke every other streamer only seem to fuel his fire. But even he has hit massive walls in the past while grinding through the content. Now the chat is flooded with people finally seeing what they thought was impossible. Everyone else failed to track the target, wasting hours on dead-end search patterns, yet Seo-jun is making it look like a casual walk in the park. It turns out this hell difficulty run was not just talk, it was a legitimate masterclass. The small-time streamer he joined is reaping the rewards of this historic broadcast. Seo-jun keeps carving through the estate defense force with terrifying, fluid speed. Every strike connects and the viewers are completely hooked on the spectacle. Notifications and donation alerts are blowing up the screen in real time. He leaves the guards in his wake, moving deeper into the fortified complex. Accusations of cheating start appearing in the chat, but he barely bats an eye. The guy just keeps deflecting and countering, unimpressed by the desperate resistance. Even as the chat descends into frantic chaos, Seo-jun stays deadpan and focused. He nonchalantly brushes off the noise, ready to keep dismantling the game's toughest defense. Seo-jun realizes his follower count has jumped to 6, but there is no time to celebrate as the boss fight begins. The chat is losing its mind as the real encounter kicks off, and he narrowly dodges a massive strike with impossible reflexes. Even when the boss tries to swing hard, the reaction speed is just too much. So the taunting boss starts swinging a flail around like a total maniac. Seo-jun refuses to back down, rushing straight into the danger zone, weaving through the lethal arcs of that weighted chain weapon. He lands a clean hit, chipping away at the boss's health bar, yet the opponent just laughs it off, clearly feeling completely untouchable. Mocking the effort, the boss questions why he is even bothering to attack. But the player knows exactly what he is doing, noticing how little damage actually landed. He casually asks the chat if they want to see a parry, while the enemy boasts about his own strength and prepares to crush him. The boss slams the flail down, shaking the entire arena floor, and Seo-jun uses the momentum to close the distance instantly. He lunges forward, finding the perfect gap in the massive weapon's arc, catching the chain mid-swing with a precise and calculated movement. The counterattack forces the boss into a momentary opening, and he follows up with another strike, though the boss remains stubbornly standing. The sparks fly as his blade grinds against the boss's gear, but the damage output is still way too low to finish the job. Seo-jun wonders if he can even clear this in time when a sudden chat notification reveals a hidden 5-minute instant fail timer. Panic sets in as he realizes the clock is already ticking down. And he barely deflects a lethal strike while trying to process the news. The boss mocks his lack of focus, eager to exploit the distraction, but Seo-jun knows he has to find a shortcut before the timer hits 0. Scanning for a weak point, he spots a potential trick in the boss's defense, while the chat floods the screen with a theory about stacking damage on one spot. Deciding to trust the community, he prepares to focus all his attacks. And he launches a desperate, high-velocity strike at the exact same location. The blade bites deep into the boss's armor with newfound intensity, finally carving through the defenses and chunking away a massive portion of health. The strategy works perfectly, and Seo-jun realizes the community's advice was spot on, leaving the boss visibly rattled as his health bar continues to plummet. With only 2 minutes left, there is no room for any more errors. So he presses the advantage, clashing head-on with the enraged heavy hitter. Every strike now carries the weight of the ticking clock behind it, and the boss struggles to regain control as his weapon is forced aside. The boss roars in pure frustration as the relentless assault continues, with the timer dipping to just over a minute left on the clock. Damage numbers skyrocket as the chat goes absolutely wild over his reaction speed. And the boss's health bar begins to rapidly evaporate under the pressure. Seo-jun keeps his focus locked in, realizing the enemy has a sliver of health left, so he readies himself for one final decisive strike to finish the job. The clock keeps ticking down, hitting the 50-second mark as he closes the distance, but the boss is already spiraling into a final, desperate act of defiance. Spitting insults about the assassination squad, the enemy prepares a suicidal counter. And he screams that he refuses to die alone in this room. A notification suddenly flashes across the screen confirming the mission is clear, yet the danger is far from over as the boss triggers a massive self-destruct. Seo-jun pauses for a split second, processing the system update, while the chat loses its mind over his record-breaking performance in the tutorial. He realizes something is wrong the moment the room begins to shake. And he turns just in time to see glowing magic circles erupting everywhere. The boss has initiated a massive detonation spell, turning the entire arena into a bomb, and a blinding explosion of fire consumes the space in an instant. He scrambles to survive the fallout of the blast, realizing the enemy's final move was a trap designed to take them both out. Chaos erupts as the enemy forces finally spot the assassin, and Seo-jun knows he has to move immediately to escape the chaos. Running toward the horizon under a blood-red moon, he narrowly avoids his pursuers, but the terrain becomes treacherous as he pushes himself to the limit. A sudden projectile forces him to dodge, slicing through the air behind him, and he realizes he's being tracked by someone who means business. The force of the attack knocks him off balance, nearly sending him over the edge, while his footing slips on the loose, jagged rock of the cliffside. Falling through the dark, he struggles to regain control of his momentum, and he reaches out in desperation toward the ledge he just lost. With his strength fading, he accepts that he cannot climb back up, so he plummets toward the churning waters far below the cliff. He drifts unconscious as the sun begins to rise over the distant mountains, eventually washing up on the riverbank, battered and completely spent. Waking up in the shallows, he manages to drag himself onto the shore. And his boots finally find solid ground as he crawls away from the current. He reaches into his cloak, checking to see if his prize survived the fall, and he finds himself alone in the quiet forest with his thoughts. The artifact is still intact in his hand, glowing with a soft light, as the system confirms he is now officially switching back to the player character. The system chat is roasting his latest performance in the cutscene. And viewers are mocking his questionable combat skills as he sighs. Clasping his hands together, he tries to brush off the toxic comments, wondering what his next move should be now that he's grounded. A quest notification pops up, directing him to find Christina at the tavern, so he heads inside, realizing the game conveniently dropped him right at the door. Stepping out of the shadows, he enters the bustling room to spot his target. Where the noise of the crowd fills the space as he scans the interior. He notices her working behind the bar, looking exactly like the quest marker promised, and she catches his gaze, her expression sharp and impossible to misread. The way she looks at him suggests she is not just another NPC, so he approaches the counter and asks if she has a moment to talk. When she asks what he needs, he smiles and says he has plenty to discuss. Meanwhile, the system shifts into auto mode as he pulls out the mysterious item. She stares at the object in his hand, her recognition immediate and intense, realizing exactly what he is holding as the atmosphere in the tavern shifts. Caught off guard, she demands to know his identity with a sudden spark of panic, but he keeps his cool, sitting down to tell her he is only here to help. Dropping the act, he mentions his recent experience with the assassination squads. And she leans in, whispering a question about whether he hails from the West. He presses her on her reputation as a mercenary who works for anyone with coin, betting that she would never actually align herself with the mysterious cult. She sighs and concedes that he has a point, deciding it is finally time to trade names instead of threats. Christina introduces herself and asks for his, but the system immediately prompts him to input a username for her to see. His viewers in the chat start throwing out ridiculous suggestions, though he ultimately decides to just stick with his real name, Jin Seo-jun. Since the system defaults to his real identity anyway, he figures it is a safe bet, but he suddenly pivots and decides to go with something far more edgy. He introduces himself to Christina as Nameless, leaving her completely stunned, while his chat goes wild over the absolute cheesiness of the choice. He internally justifies the name as a trend from his past life, thinking it sounded cool enough to become a popular handle back then. Confirming the selection in the system menu, he officially unlocks the ability to accept assassination requests at the tavern. With the identity settled, he asks how they will maintain contact moving forward, then pivots back to the investigation, demanding to know the owner of the brooch. Christina admits she buried the previous owner at the Western Docks. And she hands him a communication item to keep their connection open. With the signal stone now in his inventory, Christina sends him off with a lingering look, calling him by his new alias. He makes his way out of the tavern as the sun begins to set, finally letting out a long sigh of relief that the day's tasks are done. Checking in with his chat, he tells them he is still undecided on a permanent handle. Then officially signs off from the stream with a promise to return at the same time tomorrow. He fumbles through the awkward closing dialogue while his viewers flood the chat with jokes about his total lack of streaming experience. The broadcast finally cuts to black and he checks the final viewer count, finding only 6 people stuck around until the end. A quick glance at those usernames shows them to be strangely familiar, causing him to pause as he realizes something is off. Suddenly, a new user joins the chat room, and he stares in confusion as the notifications keep rolling in despite the stream being over. Pulling up his phone to check the source of the activity, he wonders why he's getting absolutely no engagement on his content. Just then his door slams open as his roommate charges in and demands to know what he was doing all evening. Caught completely off guard, he stares at his phone in a panic, watching in disbelief as his chat screen explodes with hundreds of new messages. Staring at his phone, he can't believe the numbers are actually climbing, as the notification count begins to snowball toward 30 likes in real time. His roommate notices the surge too and predicts that once the post hits that threshold, his follower count is going to explode. Dismissing his own exhaustion, he tells his buddy to just get some sleep, but even in bed, curiosity gets the better of him. Checking the feed again, he realizes the platform is already pushing new recommendations his way, and finally understands what people mean when they talk about getting a promo boost. He decides to investigate the viral clip for himself, wondering what exactly about his gameplay is catching everyone's attention. Watching the footage, he sees an AI opponent that behaves nothing like the usual NPCs, showing a level of tactical awareness that is completely unexpected. The AI relentlessly exploits every opening, forcing players to surrender, and even has the nerve to taunt its victims right to their faces. Watching the clip, he realizes why the viewers are losing their minds and reflects on how all that repetitive grinding finally paid off in a weird way. The comments are already rolling in, labeling him a toxic player with zero morals, but then he notices someone in the chat has already figured out it was him behind the stream. A quick check of his profile shows a massive spike in his follower count, leaving him to wonder how he went from 6 viewers to hundreds overnight. Jin Seo-jun hits the button to go live and the stream notification immediately blares out to his audience. He spawns into the city of Altian, but the chat feed is already exploding with notifications and incoming messages. Viewers are flooding in, some questioning if he's actually the famous Nameless. While one user desperately begs him to explain how to replicate his viral combat moves, Seo-jun realizes he just received his very first donation, though the chat is a chaotic mix of people demanding tips and others complaining about his attitude. Deciding to acknowledge the support, he prepares to offer a real demonstration, explaining that targeting an NPC's weak point is the key to breaking their posture. He scans the incoming requests for something specific to showcase, and settles on a practical lesson to get the ball rolling. Walking through the crowded street, he eyes a potential target for a live pickpocketing run, focusing on a man pushing through the throng of people. The man shoves past others, oblivious to the player stalking him, but Seo-jun bumps into him with precise timing, and despite the man's angry outburst about watching where he's going, the guy continues on his way, completely unaware of what just happened. Seo-jun keeps his cool, turning away as if nothing occurred, and pulls out the stolen pouch to show the chat he's successfully landed 3 in a row. The chat is absolutely losing it over his criminal gameplay, and even though he's just grinding, the donations are already piling up. That massive influx of points proves the viewers are hooked, but his streak is interrupted by an NPC demanding his attention. A couple of local thugs corner him in the alleyway, clearly unhappy with him operating on their turf without permission. They are not interested in a friendly chat about territory, especially when they spot the stolen loot still in his hand. The chat immediately starts roasting him for getting caught, while others bet on whether he can actually parry his way out. Meanwhile, the guards are closing in on his actual location, and one of them is clearly ready for a serious fight. A blade flashes as they tighten the perimeter around him, leaving him scrambling to find a way out of the trap. He scans the dark hallways for any possible escape route, but the path ahead is looking increasingly blocked by the guards. These soldiers are part of a much larger, dangerous organization known as the Rulers, who control the 4 districts of Altian. At the very top, the Queen holds absolute power, while the Tower Master keeps the entire city under his thumb. The game's hierarchy is laid out, starting with the Royalist leader and the disassembler boss, a guy named Drake who's practically a legend. He's notorious for spawning randomly in hidden areas, making him nearly impossible to track, but Seo-jun just secured the secret map needed to find him. A massive donation rolls in, challenging him to complete a full rampage run, and although it sounds like a death sentence, he decides to take the bait. The chat goes wild with laughter, mocking the impossibility of the task, while viewers debate whether he's actually got the skills to pull it off. Pressure mounts as the audience starts calling his bluff in real time, but a sudden massive donation shifts the mood back to hype. 30 minutes after his bold declaration, he's already on the move, stalking through the city alleys while guards patrol the surrounding streets. Viewers are losing their minds, wondering where he's leading his pursuers, but he stays focused, keeping the guards right on his trail. The chat is flooded with questions about how he plans to take down a ruler, and even he seems to be playing it cool despite the massive odds. Suddenly, he pulls off a perfect parry that leaves the entire stream stunned, and a new notification pops up asking exactly how he knows so much about Drake. He drops a casual reveal that he actually stayed up all night studying, proving that his so-called luck is really just hours of intense preparation. Seo-jun brushes off the comments warning him about Drake, claiming it is actually simple to avoid getting hit at all. He corners a group of thugs in a dark alley, demanding they return the items and the wallet they stole earlier. His stream audience watches in disbelief as he confronts the entire group, but the thugs just mock him and get physically aggressive in his space. They laugh off his demands, assuming he is just another scared target. While his chilling response makes the chat realize he is actually furious, he pivots the conversation straight to their boss, asking where to find Drake, and the thugs are stunned that he would even dare to ask. A sharp crack of knuckles signals the end of his patience, informing them he will simply punch the location out of them. The thugs are baffled by his sudden shift to brute force, so they charge at him all at once to put him down. He dodges their initial assault with ease, closing the distance instantly, and counters the first attacker with a swift, punishing strike. Another thug lunges with a blade, desperate to land a hit, but he tracks the movement with perfect, almost inhuman precision. A quick deflection redirects the steel away from his vitals, and he immediately follows up by launching himself into their center. The first thug crumples after a brutal, direct impact. But Seo-jun is already moving on to the next threat. A clean parry sends his opponent's blade spinning into the air, leaving the man wide open and shouting in pure frustration. With a display of overwhelming speed, he closes the gap again, leaving his target stunned as the blade hums against their armor. Cold focus locks onto the final survivor, who can only watch helplessly as the steel presses against him. The remaining opposition is completely neutralized in seconds. And he stands amidst the wreckage of the group's morale. Viewers in the chat are already losing their minds over the combat, but the survivor is still trying to talk tough through his panic. Fear finally sets in as he realizes who he is dealing with, yet the interrogation continues with a blade held to his throat. Refusing to give up the location, the thug tries to hold his ground, but the sheer intensity of the situation breaks his composure entirely. Relentless pressure forces a stuttering, desperate attempt at resistance, and the stream notes that the guy is too terrified to even speak. Chat wonders if this is an interrogation or just plain torture until the name of the location finally slips out under duress. The live stream is absolutely losing its mind as viewers spam reactions to the chaos he just caused. Seo-jun ignores the noise and avoids the camera lens while he swaps out his current weapon for something better. Scoping out the area, he hunts for a more suitable tool, finding exactly what he needs to escalate the fight. A heavy blade is claimed, and he prepares for the next wave, immediately diving back into the fray without hesitation. Swinging the weapon with precision, he tears through the line, sending shockwaves through the group of remaining enemies. Every strike lands with devastating force and perfect timing, leaving the stairs littered with bodies as he clears his path. The blade bites deep as he cuts down the final resistance, while the chat continues to roast the developers for this difficulty. Laughing off the challenge, he finds the combat rhythm addicting, but a sudden shift in the air signals a new threat. Energy surges as he identifies an incoming projectile attack, and he counters the incoming barrage with a swift deflection. Focusing his senses, he tracks the source of the hidden magic and stands ready to face whatever boss is lurking nearby. Seo-jun brushes off the initial assault with ease, narrowly avoiding the magical blades tearing through the air. The chat is already losing it over his reaction speed, but the boss just stands there, clearly impressed by the performance. With a sadistic grin, the man pulls out a handful of daggers, revealing himself as Drake, the disassembler boss. He launches a massive wave of projectiles in a wide arc, flooding the area with lethal steel from every angle. This is not just a simple throw, but a coordinated magical strike, and the audience knows these patterns are going to be a nightmare. Spinning his own weapon like a shield, he creates a defensive vortex, deflecting every single dagger that dares to close the distance. The sound of metal clashing against metal fills the room as he systematically swats away the entire deadly barrage. Drake watches the show with a mix of surprise and growing interest. While the viewers in the chat cannot believe he is still unfazed. Impressed by the display, the boss finally asks for a name, but the kid just keeps his guard up and plays it cool. Acknowledging the request with a simple, mysterious label, the standoff continues as Drake prepares for his next move. Drake decides to stop holding back and goes all out, launching a massive, heavy strike that tears through the air. The sheer force of the impact shatters the ground underneath. But Seo-jun is already moving, dodging the chain-linked weapons with ease. One after another, the blades lash out in a relentless rhythm, forcing the kid to pivot and weave through the deadly arc. He's realizing now that this is not just basic projectile throwing, but a sophisticated combat system designed to trap any opponent. The chat is going crazy, acknowledging that Drake is a monster and that nobody has ever cleared this specific boss before today. Seeing his target will not budge, the boss decides to close the gap, charging forward with a murderous intent that fills the entire room. A brutal clash of metal erupts the moment they finally collide, with sparks flying as their weapons lock in a desperate struggle. They trade blows at high speed, neither one giving an inch, while the viewers watch in disbelief at the sheer defensive display. Seo-jun knows this intensity is much harder to handle all at once. But he recalls his training in the legendary Blade Mountain trial. Finding the rhythm, he spots the perfect opening in the attack and prepares to break the distance to finish this match. Seo-jun calls out the boss for leaving a massive opening and delivers a strike that lands with incredible force. The impact forces Drake to recoil, clearly stunned by the blow, though Seo-jun knows a basic parry only buys a moment against a boss this tough. Chains erupt to protect the enemy, making a clean follow-up nearly impossible, but Seo-jun remains unfazed by the sudden defensive wall. He trusts his technique to bypass the obstacles entirely, focusing his breathing as he prepares the decisive move. After swinging his sword thousands of times, the stance is muscle memory, so he plants his feet and generates raw power from the ground up. High-level energy gathers, swirling around him as he commits to the strike, channeling every bit of his focus into a single lethal motion. The sheer intensity of the attack begins to tear through the air, and with a precise swing, he targets the boss's head. Steel meets flesh, crushing the defense and ending the stalemate instantly. The chat is losing its mind, realizing just how effortlessly he dismantled the boss, while Seo-jun reflects that his VR body feels just as capable as his old one. Every detail of his movement, the footwork, the torso twist, and the arm arc is tuned for maximum efficiency. It is a different body, but the legendary results remain the same. With the boss reeling, the chains whip back with desperate force, but Seo-jun is already closing the gap to finish the job. Drake screams in defiance, his control over the weapon slipping, and he lashes out one last time, hoping to catch his opponent off guard. The blade slices through the air, parrying the incoming metal, while our lead moves in with calculated, aggressive precision. A brutal impact rings out as he lands a decisive blow, leaving the boss pinned to the ground amidst the shattered stone. Seo-jun steps into the fray, completely unfazed by the chaos, reveling in the thrill of a fight that proves his past life was real. A grin spreads across his face, realizing this is exactly where he belongs, and he raises his sword, channeling every ounce of remaining strength. With a final, crushing downward strike, the weapon pierces the boss, pinning the enemy to the floor until the life finally fades away. The force of the finisher cracks the earth, signaling the end, and Drake collapses, defeated as the system registers the conclusion. A clear status pops up, granting him the Shard of Order as a reward, while the chat goes absolutely ballistic with massive donations pouring in. Seo-jun checks the viewer count in shock, stunned to see it hit 447. But his celebration is cut short as the Baekryun troupe makes their move. Seo-jun stares at the massive viewer surge in disbelief, noticing the count has officially overtaken his total follower base. He tries to play it cool while processing the numbers, but the sudden spike is impossible to hide from his face. Memories of Tabwoo's blunt advice about streaming ethics flood back, yet he can't help but enjoy the validation of the success. The chat is absolutely losing it over his unconventional pipe-fighting style, raining massive donations down as the hype reaches a fever pitch. That trusty pipe is now a legendary status symbol for the fans, while the audience marvels at him clearing the room without any buffs. He thanks his top donor for the massive 10,001 payout, but his thoughts shift to the suspicious absence of the local authorities. Looking around the empty, ruined streets, he realizes the city guards have byelayed, leaving him to deal with the aftermath of the combat alone. Deciding there is no point in waiting for backup that is not coming, he turns his back on the wreckage to make his exit, walking out into the golden light of the early morning. Someone calls out the name Nameless to get his immediate attention, and he shifts his gaze toward the voice echoing through the plaza. Wondering who exactly is trying to track him down right now, a mysterious woman approaches, greeting him after the Drake incident, while the chat loses its mind over her sudden appearance. She hands over a heavy bag, claiming it's a small step toward liberation, and insists he take the reward for his services. System notifications confirm his reputation boost as the currency lands in his hand, but he awkwardly refuses, claiming he did not even sign a contract. The chat mocks his confusion, pointing out he's literally refusing free money, so he asks where he should even head next after this. She just smiles at his genuine bewilderment and decides to take her leave, waving goodbye to Nameless. Watching her walk away, he stands alone in the quiet plaza, realizing he still has a job to finish. The chat starts debating whether that messy fight actually counts as an assassination, arguing over the definition of the mission while he brushes it off. He decides the stream has hit a good stopping point and ignores the viewers begging him to keep playing. Fans spam the chat as he moves to disconnect, but he cuts the feed and vanishes from the screen. Back in the real world, he leans back in his gaming chair only to find someone else in the room staring at him. The uninvited guest in his room is his own roommate, who admits to stalking his stream while he was away. They get into a quick scuffle over personal boundaries. But they settle down once the chaos finally dies off. Checking his phone, he sees a modest 400 viewers, though his roommate snatches the device to get a closer look. A video of his recent hunt starts playing on the screen, showing him completely dominating the Drake in the game. Comments are already flooding in from viewers who saw the clip, and they are obsessing over the mysterious Shard of Order item. He realizes there is zero public data on that specific drop, leaving him wondering what its true purpose actually is. More fans are piling into the chat with mixed reactions, so his roommate points out that his popularity is clearly skyrocketing. He remains skeptical about the sudden influx of attention, questioning if the spotlight is even a good thing right now. His roommate keeps scrolling through the massive forum threads, proving that thousands of people are now tracking his moves. He stares at the screen, coming to terms with the reality that his private gaming session has officially gone viral. Seo-jun scrolls through comments, obsessed with a streamer named Alpaca, watching fans pledge total loyalty to this guy's desperate grind. He finds the whole situation hilarious and hits up a contact, waking up Tiwoo with a direct question about the streamer. After confirming they have collaborated before, he cuts to the chase, telling his friend he needs a favor to handle the situation. Meanwhile, the streamer is hitting a wall on his 13th attempt, getting absolutely roasted by his own chat for failing again. Exhausted and salty, he laments relying on the wrong gear until a surprise distraction appears right in front of him. A mascot creature gifted by his fans waddles onto the screen, but the cute gesture turns into a chaotic mess immediately. The alpaca mascot spits right in his face on live stream, leaving him frustrated as he realizes it's not making the game easier. He tries to refocus on the challenge despite the mounting pressure when a massive donation alert pops up from a mysterious viewer. A notification claims someone has actually cleared the impossible stage, and he pulls up the link to see the proof himself. He watches the video in disbelief, calling the whole thing a scam, only to see his own name being outclassed by a total stranger. Watching the impossible clear play out, he's left questioning who this nameless guy actually is. The video stats are already blowing up, proving this is not just some clever edit. A sudden notification hits his inbox, interrupting his spiral of confusion. Jumping at the pop-up, he wonders just who is trying to reach him right now. The sender turns out to be Jin Seo-jun, reaching out under the nameless handle. A direct message pops up asking for a moment of his time to talk. Meanwhile, over at the headquarters of Moviesoft Korea, the office is buzzing with activity. The CEO takes a quiet moment with his coffee, unaware of the chaos brewing. His peace is short-lived as an employee bursts into his office without warning. The coffee break is officially over, replaced by the frantic energy of an underling. An urgent report hits his desk about a major development in the game. Scolded for his lack of manners, the employee rushes to deliver the bad news. The company's top brass demands to know what could possibly be so urgent. A critical piece of the game's hierarchy has been forcibly taken down. It was not just a simple defeat, but a complete and total rampage clear. The victim of this sudden takedown is none other than Drake himself. Within the game world, the other bosses are already laughing at their peers' expense. The CEO seems almost pleased that someone finally put that weakling in his place. Concern shifts toward how this unexpected loss will disrupt their carefully laid plans. But the employee reminds him that he's the one who designed the system to fail. The Shard of Order lands as a rare reward for those who clear a ruler via specific routes. Snagging this item is not just about skill, because some rulers are locked behind abilities that take ages to grind. The player base is already losing their minds trying to figure out how to unlock these hidden requirements. Chains of code hold the ability back, designed specifically to waste the user's precious time and patience. Alpaca stares at the screen, getting hit with the dreaded system warning to finally take a break. Checking the forums, he sees the entire community is drowning in confusion over how to get the skill. But he knows something they do not, and he is not about to spill the beans just yet. Back in the office, the boss is busy roasting an employee for slacking off to watch a streamer. The lecture gets cut short when the employee mentions a specific name. He claims the streamer in question just went live, and the boss immediately senses something fishy. Paychecks are on the line, but the employee is desperate to prove he was not just goofing off. Frustrated by the constant disruptions, the boss demands to know what the hell is going on. They hover over the terminal, questioning if the players are actually collecting everything as planned. The topic suddenly shifts toward a massive upcoming collaboration. A colleague confirms the collab is happening today, catching the boss completely off guard. He pulls up the live notice, showing that Alpaca is actually the featured guest. Suhan tries to clear up the confusion, but his boss is already seeing red. This is not just some random appearance, and the gravity of the situation starts to sink in. The streamer is taking the master's seat, officially headlining the event. With the announcement officially confirmed, there is no denying that the rookie has officially arrived. Suhan brushes off the news, insisting that he only cares about the league and nothing else. He asks to borrow a spare capsule, but his roommate is not exactly thrilled about the request. The kid fires back with a jab about his low sync rate and the quality of his gear. Retreating to his room to watch the stream, he waits for the call to finally drop. Watching the screen, he starts to notice a strange shift in the kid's behavior lately. A sudden realization hits him like a truck as he processes the streamer's recent performance. If the guy could pull off a rampage with that gear, just how strong is he really? On the broadcast, a player jokingly warns he is not going to hold back during the event. Watching the feed, the roommate starts to sweat, wondering if he really signed up for this collab. A notification pings on his screen and he practically jumps out of his seat. The stream kicks off and the featured guest finally makes his grand entrance on camera. Jin Seo-jun introduces himself, looking surprisingly polished compared to his usual chaotic self. The viewers are stunned by how good he looks, suspecting some heavy character editor magic. Confused by the chat, the guy wonders what everyone means by all these technical terms. Meanwhile, the stream goes off the rails as someone tries to edit his face live. The chaos continues until familiar faces finally walk onto the stage to meet him. They lead the way forward, officially kicking off the collab event for the audience. Walking into the space, he takes a moment to look around at the setup. The exterior might have looked like a normal house, but the interior tells a different story. Everything is strictly professional, leaving him to wonder how a veteran streamer keeps his life so orderly. Seo-jun offers a coffee break, but the mood is already getting a little too familiar. His roommates are already roasting him over that lost bet, and he's clearly not having it. He tries to shake off the teasing, but the tension in the room is rising fast. A new face walks in, introducing himself as Lee Soo-han, the manager and editor for Alpaca. Seo-jun returns the greeting, and they immediately get down to business with a handshake. Soo-han is not wasting any time, bringing up the game dominance with a sharp, analytical look. He notes that while Seo-jun played well, his sync rate is sitting surprisingly low. The manager presses further, questioning how someone who only started playing again could perform like that. Seo-jun keeps his cool, playing it off like it's just a little bit of a secret. The roommates watching from the sidelines are starting to get nervous, sensing trouble brewing. Admitting to a bit of history, he reveals he actually played the game 7 years ago. Everyone in the room is stunned, trying to process that 7-year gap in his timeline. Soo-han digs for more info, asking what rank he managed to hit back then. Dropping the rank of silver, he gets a look of pure disbelief from the manager. Soo-han is not buying the story and immediately pushes for a match on the training grounds. The roommates try to intervene, but the manager is dead set on testing his actual skill level. One of them tries to distract him with a snack, hoping to cool the situation down. He whispers to Seo-jun that taking this fight is a terrible idea, but his warning goes ignored. Looking unfazed, Seo-jun asks why he's so sure that he's going to end up losing. Soo-han keeps his doubts to himself, leaving the air thick with the pressure of the upcoming match. Seo-jun finally drops the act and leans into the challenge. He warns the room to keep their cool while he handles this. Picking up the controller, he suggests a much harder level than anyone expected. The roommates watch in silence as they realize who he really is behind the screen. It turns out Seo-jun is actually the legendary player known as Unknown. Combat starts instantly, and the display on the monitor lights up with intense swordplay. His movements are surgically precise, cutting through the enemy's defenses without a wasted motion. The AI opponent can barely keep up with the sheer speed of his attacks. Watching the screen, the guys are completely floored by the display of skill. This kind of gameplay is on a whole different level of mechanical mastery. It is a total slaughter, with the AI unable to land a single hit. Seo-jun even drops a casual line about the AI needing decades of practice to beat him. The roommates lose their minds over how cold that flex actually was. Soo-han stares at the screen in complete disbelief at what just happened. Calling out Seo-jun's name, he finally acknowledges the gap in their ability. The manager turns to face him, the tension from earlier having completely evaporated. He declares that from this point forward, Seo-jun is officially his superior. The roommates jump in, trying to process this sudden shift in hierarchy. Soo-han bows deeply, showing total respect for the skill he just witnessed. The atmosphere in the room turns from competitive to pure fanboy energy in seconds. Catching everyone off guard, Seo-jun tries to process the sudden change in energy. Soo-han doubles down on his new stance, insisting they drop the formalities immediately. But the gaming legend is not having it, pointing out the age gap still matters. A quick flash of the past shows the roommates messing around like they always did. The playful banter continues as they tease him about that signature dopey grin. Memories of 7 years ago stir up, making everyone pause for a second. Realization hits them like a truck, wondering if he really was that player back then. The mood shifts back to business as the guys remind him of the schedule. His stream is about to go live, so there is no time left to waste. Realizing how late it is, the group scrambles to get everything ready for the broadcast. He pushes those intrusive thoughts aside, deciding not to overthink the past right now. With the gear packed, they finally head out to get the setup running. Soo-han practically vibrates with excitement, eager to usher his new Hyung to the capsule. The room clears out in a rush, moving with high energy intensity. Even with all the chaos, the focus remains locked on the upcoming event. The stream finally kicks off with a flood of incoming chat messages. Viewers are already spamming the board, hyped to see the legend back in action. Greeting his massive audience, the streamer flashes a bright, welcoming smile. The guys keep a close watch on the stats, making sure everything is running smooth. And with the feed live, the banter with the chat begins in full force. Seo-jun sighs as he shuts down a fan's request to see his past persona. Playfully swatting away the comment, he acts surprised that anyone is actually here for him. But the chat is not letting it go, relentlessly demanding he fulfill his earlier promise. He pretends to ban the user, shutting down the topic with a quick feigned irritation. Turning the tables, he drops a tease that today's stream is going to be something else. The hype levels spike instantly as he reveals they are doing a massive rampage run. Absolutely buzzing, he announces a special guest to help him pull it off. With a grand gesture, he introduces a mysterious professor to lead the charge. A sudden dramatic entrance follows, signaling the master has arrived on the scene. Spotlight hitting the designated area, he calls for his guest to step forward. Yet the stage remains completely empty, leaving everyone watching in confused silence. His smile falters as he realizes something has gone seriously wrong with the plan. Checking his phone in a panic, he tries to figure out why his guest is missing. The chat starts roasting him for the failed collab, assuming he just pulled a prank. Suddenly catching a notification, he realizes he got the date completely mixed up. An incoming message confirms his embarrassing mistake in real time. The realization hits him hard, turning his face pale as the truth sinks in. Staring at the screen, he confirms the scheduled date was actually for tomorrow. The comment section absolutely loses it, turning his blunder into legendary meme material. Left standing there in total disbelief, he has to face the music while the chat mocks his failure. Just as the chaos peaks, the actual guest finally rolls up, introducing himself as Jin Seo-jun, the guy who was supposed to be there. He brushes off the scheduling disaster, noting that his host is still a beginner. The chat immediately turns on the host, mocking him for getting schooled by a newbie. Viewer counts are skyrocketing, hitting nearly 20,000 as the insults pour in. Watching the toxicity explode, the host catches some heat and struggles to keep his cool. He admits that seeing the chat tear him apart has become part of the experience. Different streamers handle their communities in different ways, some strict and some totally chaotic. Preferring the loose vibe, he lets the trash talk fly while they sit in the field. Even with the insults flooding the screen, he keeps a surprisingly calm composure. A sudden donation notification cuts through the noise, demanding he clear the Drake. Seo-jun points out that since he killed the Drake, the host actually got off easy. The chat keeps pushing for a clear or die challenge, demanding more high-stakes gameplay. Losing his patience, the host snaps at Seo-jun for laughing at his expense. Seo-jun agrees, admitting he feels a little guilty for the mess he caused. The host can't believe he cleared the Drake on day 2, ruining his stream plan. System messages mock his situation, leaving him with no choice but to keep going. Despite the pressure mounting, Seo-jun does not seem rattled by the massive audience. He is clearly enjoying the spotlight, realizing he can finally let loose and perform. Turning the tables, he tells the host to step up and save the show now. Seo-jun commits to the segment, laying out a two-part plan for the stream. He starts by coaching the host through a live run of the game, but the second part of the show involves a brutal clear-or-die rampage challenge. The host is shocked to hear Seo-jun has not even touched his skill points yet. Most players grind with skills, so playing barehanded sounds like a total joke. Seo-jun admits he has never used them, questioning if they are actually required. The host is left speechless by that casual confession of incompetence. He asks why Seo-jun would handicap himself so severely during a run. It turns out he just never learned how to use the skill menu. The chat is already losing it, calling his barehanded style the new gold standard. While the viewer count hits 25,000, the host is sweating under the pressure. Moving past the skill talk, he pulls up a clip to show what he means. The footage shows Seo-jun in action, tearing through enemies with pure mechanical skill. He parries a strike with perfect timing, putting the weapon on the defensive. Another clean deflection creates an opening that leaves the opponent completely vulnerable. Every clash chips away at the enemy gear, showing exactly how he breaks them. A system notification confirms his progress on a secret quest to unlock weak point detection. Viewers are bewildered by the sheer absurdity of his unique playstyle. He explains that if you can break 10 weapons, you unlock a powerful passive skill. Now the goal is clear: destroy enough gear to master the art of finding weak points. Counting his progress, he confirms only 2 of the mysterious knots have been found. One was a lucky break from a shattered rapier in a previous clip, while the second appeared on a longsword during a random side quest. The chat is losing their minds trying to figure out what this unknown skill actually does. Seo-jun claims to have cracked the secret code behind these strange markings. And he is clearly enjoying the chaos he is causing in the stream's comment section. Viewers are already calling him a walking cheat code for seemingly knowing too much. He pivots the energy, proposing a high-stakes bet to be settled before the stream ends. Channel points start raining down as the audience engages with the new betting system. While points are usually for simple chat effects, everyone knows the real goal here. It is all about predicting the outcome of his progress on these mysterious knots. The betting board goes live, and the options range from conservative to absolutely wild. Confused by the jargon, he asks for a breakdown of what the safe line implies. The safe bet offers a lower payout for the most likely scenario, but he realizes that betting on him to find 4 or more knots is currently the underdog. Doubling down, he invites everyone to put their points where their mouths are. A massive donation hits the screen, signaling that someone is betting big on his success. He just smiles, clearly confident he's going to win this wager by a landslide. The stream shifts gears as he launches into the next stage of his mission. With the moon high, he sets off toward the next objective to prove them all wrong. The situation takes a dark turn as Seo-jun finds himself cornered and desperate, facing down an opponent who is clearly enjoying the hunt with blade in hand. Pleading for mercy falls on deaf ears while the attacker looms over him, until a swift movement changes the dynamic entirely between the two combatants. Mocking his victim, the assailant offers a cruel chance to run for his life, but the stream chat recognizes the attacker instantly as the infamous Lewis Neville. Viewers start piecing together exactly who is threatening the kid from the viral clip. While back in the present, Seo-jun prepares to test the limits of his consistency. Focusing on an ordinary sword, he looks for the perfect angle to shatter it. The strike lands with precision, proving that even a simple blow carries massive weight, and his partner notes that this kind of technique is leagues above standard parrying. Eyes locked on the target, the tension reaches a breaking point for the observer, as the weapon finally gives way under the pressure of his calculated attack. Pieces of the blade fly everywhere, confirming the success of his destructive maneuver. And he stands tall, having effectively dismantled his opponent's gear in one go. A system notification confirms the progress toward his quest to break 10 weapons, while his companion watches in awe, realizing just how different he really is. They acknowledge that despite the show of force, there is still more to prove, but the conviction in his eyes suggests he has solved the underlying puzzle, confirming that his theory on the hidden rule was right all along. The stream chat is already losing its mind over the antics. But an unexpected intruder suddenly crashes the broadcast, so Seo-jun decides to show everyone exactly how he handles threats, focusing intently on identifying the structural weak points of his enemy's gear, recalling old martial arts wisdom about finding the hidden knots in a defense, and even without being a master monk, he can still read the combat flow by sensing the true intent behind his opponent's movements and equipment. Because understanding the creator of a weapon is the ultimate key to breaking it, so he closes his eyes to sharpen his focus despite the confused chat, and lunges forward to meet the incoming guard of the armored soldier, striking with enough precision to crack the shield right down its center, leaving the opponent stunned as the weapon begins to shatter on impact, and the heavy shield falls apart before the eyes of the onlookers, leaving his companion completely speechless at the sudden display of power. While he continues to dismantle the remaining defenses with terrifying efficiency, scattering shards of broken equipment under the light of the moon, and his partner can only watch in disbelief at the sheer insanity of it, as the stream chat explodes in total confusion trying to process the feat, marveling at how he managed to pull off such a strike with his eyes closed. And they are left begging for an explanation as he continues his display. Seo-jun brushes off the chat's accusations of a rigged performance, while his partner flips out over viewers calling the entire stream fake, and he just laughs at the panic, having seen through the setup all along as the donation feed fills with hate and demands for an immediate apology, but he reminds his shocked partner that he told him to bet big. Though he still feels like something is off with the current viewer predictions, and points out the channel polls showing everyone betting on his total failure, noting how the vast majority are convinced he will come up completely empty, finding it hilarious that the entire chat has managed to synchronize their doubt, and he revels in the fact that they are all going to lose together, while his partner realizes he is actually a natural at managing a live audience. Watching in awe as the stream numbers continue to climb higher and higher, so he finally calls for a reset and tells everyone to take a breath, turning to face his partner who's demanding to know his real secret. And while the chat digs for his personal info, he keeps it casual, claiming to be nothing more than an average guy in his 20s, which forces a hilarious reaction from his partner who knows better. Because after that display, there is no way he is just some regular dude. And he decides it is time to reveal his real face to the cameras, leaving the entire chat absolutely stunned by his sudden and perfect appearance. With that donation landing, the chat starts losing its collective mind, desperately trying to figure out how he pulled off that last move, but their brains are literally melting trying to process his speed, and the partner is already hovering over the ban button in a panic. Yet another massive donation interrupts the chaos with a cryptic message. So Seo-jun casually brushes it off and tells his partner to stand down, forcing a begrudging acceptance since the stream is still raking in the cash, even as the viewers start calling out his insane reflexes with a blade, and he just claps his hands to reset the mood for the game, though the partner is still dying to know how he managed that feat, asking point-blank how he knew exactly where to strike without looking, and he drops the ultimate troll answer by claiming he is just a genius, which leaves the audience absolutely baffled by his refusal to explain, resulting in a chat feed that is now pure unadulterated chaos, where the partner just wilts under the sheer weight of his smugness, begging him to drop the act and share some actual pro-level wisdom. So he finally leans in to explain the secret behind his gameplay, revealing that he just tries to think like the game's actual developers, and he demonstrates how to exploit mechanics like parrying to clear mobs, proving that while everyone else plays the game, he is essentially reading it. Seo-jun brushes off the idea of using knots on weak mobs, concluding that the mechanic is specifically tuned for boss encounters, but his partner warns him that bosses like Drake are way too difficult, and he just smiles, announcing he plans to hunt a ruler instead, which sends the chat into a spiral of disbelief and desperate pleas, yet he simply decides to go for an alpaca hunt instead, pulling his partner into a new high-stakes gamble on his performance, and the stream chat immediately launches a prediction poll on his success. So he tells the audience to just watch and follow his lead before he launches himself straight into the heart of the action, closing the distance in a flash to confront the enemy head-on, where Ruler Richard stands ready to claim vengeance for his fallen son, swinging a massive blade with enough force to shatter the arena. But the kid parries the heavy strike with effortless surgical precision, sliding past the boss's guard before the guy can even recover, leaving Richard completely stunned by the sheer speed of the counter while the partner watches in shock as the boss fails to spot the trap, wondering how Seo-jun managed to set a knot without being seen, and the crowd goes wild as the boss realizes he has been outplayed, leaving everyone wondering how the hell he pulled off such a clean hit. But the chat warns him that Richard's blade is special, so Seo-jun shrugs off the doubt about his knot technique, bracing for the next clash as energy crackles around them, and with a confident grin he decides to test it, diving straight into another high-stakes exchange of steel where their weapons collide in a shower of sparks while Richard roars that the same stunt will not work twice. But the kid finds the opening he's been hunting for, striking deep to land another clean hit on the boss, prompting his partner to cheer as the count climbs higher, and Seo-jun maintains his rhythm through the relentless assault, while the system tracks his progress toward a new skill, rapidly ticking up the counter from 5 to 9, keeping the pressure on while watching his opponent stumble, leaving the chat in total disbelief at his surgical precision. And as Richard falters, the final strike connects perfectly, completing the 10th hit to trigger the quest notification. finally unlocking the powerful weak point detection ability. So with his new tool ready, he prepares the next move and brushes off the boss's confusion with a casual apology. Mocking his opponent's technique, Seo-jun ends the duel with a sharp jab, then takes a breather after finally logging out of the virtual arena, where his loyal junior is waiting to gush over the performance, bowing deeply to show appreciation for being allowed to use the equipment. But Seo-jun clearly feels a bit awkward with all that sudden physical affection. And while heading out, he's intercepted by someone waiting in the hallway who's been hanging out all day to catch him after the stream, asking if he's ready to head out for their scheduled plans, so he realizes he nearly forgot about the collab event today. Meanwhile, the stream chat is losing its mind, spamming for his return, forcing the streamer on screen to try and manage the chaotic mob. But the viewers just keep shouting him down in the comments, so he takes a moment to regain his composure for the broadcast, finally announcing that the guest of honor has arrived, and he builds up the hype to introduce the mystery streamer, showing off his own smug confidence as the guest steps in. So Seo-jun walks into the frame to meet the fans in person, greeting the audience with a smile that immediately sends the chat into a frenzy. And he introduces himself properly to the massive online crowd, while the system finishes loading up the environment for their joint session. The stream chat immediately starts thirsting over his appearance, but the trolls quickly pivot to roasting his friend's weight instead, so the poor guy has to defend his fitness level live, and the chat ruthlessly jokes that he's already taken a metaphorical KO, which makes him want to step away from the keyboard for a bit, since he really needs to go prep dinner for the group. But a massive donation comes in right as he tries to leave, and he gets a flustered confession from a fan he assumes is a guy, though the chat starts spamming signals that the donor is actually a woman, so the awkwardness keeps piling up with even more fan donations, finally steering the conversation back toward his unique gaming abilities, like the powerful weak point detection skill he uses to dismantle armor, which allows him to land precise strikes that shatter enemy gear, so he teases that they'll have to tune in tomorrow to see more. And he transitions into a quick Q&A session to keep the momentum, answering random questions about his workout routine and character lore, while revealing he only started streaming because a friend pushed him into it. And the scene cuts to the kitchen where the steak is already sizzling as his friend Tiwoo jumps in to claim credit for that recommendation, leaving the chat to wonder how these two even became friends in the first place. Tiwoo spills the tea that they go way back to high school, and the chat absolutely loses its mind realizing they actually live together, while the donation notifications start blowing up with fans freaking out over the reveal, so Seo-jun tries to downplay the chaos while Tiwoo just keeps on talking, but then a huge donation triggers an automated video clip to play. And Seo-jun desperately lunges for the phone to stop the broadcast, though he's too late to stop the clip from revealing a story, showing him on camera roasting his roommate for being a total weirdo, like the time he tried to wash a waterproof device with actual soap, or that other time he spent hours cooling a gaming capsule by hand, and the footage shows him looking completely unhinged during these tech mishaps, which leaves Seo-jun absolutely mortified as he realizes the fans saw everything. So Tiwoo just laughs it off while they finish their dinner together. And with the meal finally over, the stream winds down to a close, while they wrap up the collab with some genuine respect for the grind, and the guest admits he learned a lot from watching Seo-jun play. So the conversation shifts to whether the guest plans on streaming on YouTube, but he admits he's still pretty inexperienced with the whole platform, so he offers to introduce him to a professional editor if he starts, leaving Seo-jun curious about exactly who this mysterious contact might be. Seo-jun cracks open a cold drink on the balcony, letting the moment sink in as he enjoys the refreshing taste, but he can't stop questioning if starting an YouTube channel is really worth it. While back at the table, his friends keep pushing the idea hard, insisting that his growth potential is massive if he just commits, and they point out that the revenue is already looking pretty solid. Though Seo-jun remains skeptical about the workload involved, especially since finding a good editor for capsule games is notoriously difficult. So he pivots the conversation to ask how Soo-han ended up managing Alpaca, and Soo-han explains he started as just another regular office worker who stumbled onto Alpaca's channel and realized it was completely neglected, so he reached out to the creator because he saw real untapped potential, choosing to quit his stable job just to help that tiny channel grow, because he was absolutely certain that Alpaca was going to explode in popularity. And looking at how far they have come, his gamble clearly paid off, leaving Seo-jun alone with his thoughts as the city lights shimmer below, realizing that having a pro editor is basically mandatory for any real success, while he scrolls through trending videos and sees how competitive the platform is, knowing his ultimate goal is still winning the championship trophy, even though he was originally planning to quit everything once he got his hands on the capsule. Streaming has actually turned out to be way more fun than expected, and he realizes that hanging out with these people has started to grow on him, even though he used to look down on these supposedly clueless brats, but a wave of sudden, quiet reflection hits him while he stands there, as he wonders if he was actually just lonely all this time, staring at his drink while the realization settles in, looking out at the trees and feeling the weight of his past life, which feels like a distant hometown he can never return to, a memory that persists no matter how far he moves forward. But he shakes off the sentimentality with a quick dismissive thought, deciding it is time to clear his head at the gym instead, heading out to get some serious physical work done. stepping into the ring for a high-intensity sparring session, where he trades heavy blows with a skilled opponent, focusing entirely on the rhythm of his own breathing, while the instructor watches him burn off all that stress, noting how everyone leaves the ring stronger after sparring with him. Though the mood shifts when he hears a familiar voice as the younger fighter complains about his endless treadmill routine, and the coach just shuts him down, insisting he keeps training. Seo-jun tries to pull the pro gamer card on his coach, but gets a blunt reminder that this gym is real life, and he is sick of being stuck on the treadmill all day, so he whines until the coach finally caves to his demand, agreeing to let him spar if it stops the complaining, giving him the freedom to pick any opponent he wants, and he immediately jumps into the ring with way too much energy, suddenly locking eyes with a guy standing on the other side. Scanning the room until he spots a familiar figure in the ring, realizing the person currently dominating the sparring session is a celebrity, recognizing him instantly as the star from a viral video, recalling how Min Hyeon would not stop raving about this guy's skills, and remembering how Hyeon was equally impressed by the same footage, admitting to himself that the hype around this guy is real, actually getting intimidated by his presence despite his own bravado. While others in the gym start gossiping about a streamer appearing here, leaving Dong-soo completely confused by all the sudden attention, and he tries to brush off the weird vibes from the crowd, wondering if he should actually challenge the guy or back down until he gets a serious lesson on what sparring is really for. Getting his head back in the game and shifting focus to the opponent standing across the ring, thinking he's got the size advantage to handle this guy easily. But his coach warns him to keep his cool and stay respectful, so he decides to make his move and approach the mystery fighter, while his friend freaks out at the sheer audacity of the request, warning that asking for a spar like that is totally out of line, yet he ignores the hesitation and asks the streamer for a match anyway, bracing himself for the immediate rejection he knows is coming. But instead, he gets an unexpected invitation to step up, confirming that the streamer is indeed the Seo-jun he's seen online, and he's clearly flattered that the kid knows who he is, giving the green light for them to jump into the ring together, with the tension rising as they finally face off, both fighters strapping on their gear for the real deal, and he starts the trash talk early by claiming he's the better player, staring him down while asserting his own dominance, only to realize the streamer has absolutely no clue who he is, which hits his ego like a truck, leaving him fuming while he wonders how the guy could be so clueless. Determined to prove his worth in the ring, Seo-jun launches his offense with a confident stride, but the opponent brushes off the aggression as amateur stuff, landing a swift blow that ends the spar in an instant, shifting the scene to a quiet moment outside the gym, where Jin Ha-jun, his father, catches up with him, noting that his son barely survived that lopsided beatdown. And though he dismisses the kid as a regular civilian, Ha-jun acknowledges the raw talent despite the lack of build, moving on to check in on the status of his streaming career, pushing past his mother's old concerns to talk business. But Seo-jun admits he's not exactly streaming in the traditional sense, hearing his father critique the low viewer counts of others, while Ha-jun wonders what his son has been up to lately, suddenly suggesting he pivot to an old-school title like Planet Craft, which gets a confused reaction from his son, as the father lectures him on what constitutes a real gamer, bragging about his own potential to draw in thousands of followers, and the sheer absurdity of the comment makes Seo-jun choke on his drink, leaving him completely baffled by his dad's unexpected confidence. Seo-jun is still reeling from that insane 3,000 viewer claim, trying to make sense of the weird memes flooding his feed, as the recent community collab has sent his popularity into a frenzy, with every post he makes blowing up and racking up major upvotes, though the sudden fame is bringing plenty of unwanted attention his way, and he can't even catch a break while trying to relax at home, checking his phone only to see people obsessing over his every move, including some bizarre accusations about his latest gaming achievements, leaving him utterly confused by the toxicity pouring into his notifications. While the hate comments pile up, he realizes his reputation is taking a hit, so he decides the only way out is to report the trolls directly, and he commits to clearing the air with a formal clarification stream, hopping into his setup 3 days later to face the music, wondering just how many people are going to tune in for this, as the viewer counter begins to tick upward on his dashboard, climbing rapidly as the audience floods in to watch him struggle. Which is when the game throws a massive curveball his way, because a weak point has somehow unlocked way ahead of schedule, leaving his mentor completely stunned that he hit the milestone so fast, and proving that Seo-jun might be moving faster than anyone expected. The mentor demands an explanation for the sudden chaos, but Seo-jun remains calm, already working on a countermove, sliding a laptop over to show exactly what he found and playing a clip that stops the questions cold, revealing a video of his recent in-game performance, specifically the moment he broke those impossible knots, showing his character executing a flawless high-speed sequence and clearing the path with movements that defy standard logic, leaving the mentor completely baffled by what he just witnessed, as the kid confirms this was not some glitch or bug before pulling up the official dev logs to explain further, pointing out that Seo-jun identified a secret route in seconds. While the mentor starts fanboying over his incredible skill and aggressively defending him against all these ridiculous cheat allegations, until Seo-jun cuts through the noise to get back on track, asking what happens now that the secret is finally exposed, because this fragment is not just a random game mechanic. It was a hidden Easter egg meant for the next title, triggering the start of the massive new Fragments of Chaos quest, and syncing the release of the official teaser trailer perfectly. Seojun's carefully crafted promotional strategy is falling apart because the entire plan just hit a massive snag, forcing the dev team to realize their perfect schedule is shattered, all thanks to the unexpected actions of a single player. They scramble to ask how long the original teaser took to make, and the answer of a full month leaves everyone stunned, but Seojun suggests they could potentially rush it out in a week. Questioning what the odds are of players gathering those shards by then, he remains completely unfazed and shows total confidence, swearing that a 100% success rate is guaranteed, while the lead developer can only watch in absolute disbelief, cursing under his breath at the audacity of this kid before finally snapping and ordering him to get out, leaving the dev alone to process the mess on his screen as he watches the footage over and over in confusion. Still trying to wrap his head around how Seojun pulled it off, staring at the monitor with a mix of exhaustion and shock, and finally admitting that the gameplay was genuinely impressive, even as the view count on the video continues to skyrocket, marking a massive turning point for the game's entire launch. Seojun dives right back into the game, unleashing his skills with relentless, calculated precision, while the online community hunts for his secret techniques, leaving everyone stunned by the sheer coolness of his play as one rival developer watches, completely unable to look away, realizing his own clever strategies just got exposed on camera, and checking the clock to find he's lost track of time, finally leaning back, physically exhausted but mentally wired, amazed to see a player actually enjoying the game he built, while his entire team gathers around to monitor the feedback, watching the numbers climb with a newfound sense of purpose. And acknowledging that this kid is the real deal, as the follower count on the channel continues to explode, signaling the start of a massive, highly anticipated live stream, where Seojun greets his audience with casual, effortless charm, noting the viewer count skyrocketing with every passing second, before he pulls out his latest high-level character build, showcasing absurdly powerful gear that leaves the chat speechless, and turns his attention to the thousands waiting for orders. Officially kicking off the new event with his loyal followers. With the community buzzing over his suspicious skill, Seojun brushes off the initial chaos of setting up mods, but notices one specific user is still ghosting his invite, so he pulls up the channel rules to keep the chat focused, and quickly addresses the elephant in the room regarding his gameplay, finally confronting those accusations that he's using cheats or hacks, explaining with a deadpan look that he just analyzed the gear, tracing worn-down stress points to snap items with ease, and revealing he actually reported himself to the developers, sending an inquiry email to verify if his method was an exploit, which leaves the chat in complete disbelief at his honesty, effectively clearing his name by proving he's just too observant. So he refocuses the audience to get the stream moving, immediately catching a new notification from the game developers, who send over an official mission request for his squad, tasking them with testing the boundaries of the tower's magic, and watching as the team starts breaking the intended mechanics, while he contemplates the sheer insanity of this first objective, noting that the reward payout is frankly absurd for a starter quest as he prepares to lead his followers into the grind. With the system loading up, Seojun dives into the mage tower while his chat mocks him for taking the mission seriously, and the massive structure looms before them in the distance, marking the start of a city ruled by powerful mages, where dark secrets of human experimentation are buried deep. But he barely has time to think before a surprise attack, and he narrowly dodges a panicked NPC creeping up behind, realizing the guy just mistook him for a real assassin, so he brushes off the awkward encounter to stay focused, deciding that playing it safe is just too boring for the stream, and he rejects the tedious grind that most players endure. Even though his viewers warn him that the tower is brutal, he steps inside with total confidence in his own pace, and opens the heavy doors to face whatever waits within, entering a hall that seems eerily quiet for such a place, where he spots a few mages walking away from his position, noticing there are fewer guards than he initially expected here, so he tracks their movements to see where they are heading, while his chat grows restless waiting for some actual action. Until a guard suddenly turns around to block his path. With the guard trying to intimidate him into leaving, Seojun decides to skip the talk and lands a strike, putting the guard down before he can even sound an alarm. But the tables turn instantly as a heavy pressure slams down, pinning him to the spot as a strange force locks his limbs, leaving him unable to move while his body starts to fail, and a sinister laugh echoes through the hall as a trap triggers, revealing a hidden mage who has been waiting in the shadows, now unleashing a torrent of blue flame to finish the job, leaving the streamer trapped and defenseless against the incoming attack.